The story begins in the first week of school at Eunjang High School, a school infamous for its high population of delinquents. Colton Choi has already established his dominance in class 1 to 5, much to the chagrin of the other students. In the front, former bread shuttle Eugene Gale curses his luck at being randomly placed in Eunjang, and hopes that he can survive the school year by keeping a low profile. When Colton spits in the hair of another student, Eugene guiltily feels relieved that he's not the target. Colton then sets his sights on the boy sitting to Eugene, Gray Yun. Commenting on Gray's small, delicate and borderline feminine appearance, Colton heaves the boy from his chair to check if he's actually a girl. However, Gray quickly escapes the hold by elbowing Colton in the throat, and proceeds to wrap Colton's hands behind his back using his bag straps. The class watches in stunned silence as Gray repeatedly slaps the now helpless Colton, ending with a threat to gouge his eyes out should he ever make a scene again. Eugene narrates that this was Gray Yun's debut fight at Eunjang, and that he never saw anyone as cunning as him before or after. News of Colton's defeat reaches the other students, including Ben Park and Alex Go of class 1 to 8 and Gerard Jin of class 1 to 10. The students are somewhat skeptical of the story, noting that Colton, who left early out of embarrassment, had an advantage in both size and physique. The narration reveals that while it may seem impossible, Alex, Ben, Gerard and Gray will come together and go on to become legends at Eunjang High. While walking home from school, Gray walks into Colton smoking with two other teenagers. The two tease Colton for losing against a smaller, weaker kid. Colton protests that Gray won by using underhanded tactics. To this, the enraged Gray points out that the fight was never on equal grounds to begin with, and he calls the three disgusting meatheads. Colton's friends move in on Gray. Gray is able to suppress his nerves, coldly and swiftly dispatching the two. While Colton is frozen in fear, Gray whacks him across the forehead with his belt and admonishes Colton before walking away. The entire encounter was witnessed by Gerard Jin, who secretly tailed behind Gray out of concern that Colton would retaliate for before. By the next day, rumors about the fight have spread like wildlife among Eunjang, with reactions ranging from envy to disbelief. Philip Kim, the former king of Imdu Middle School and cousin of one of the goons Gray fought, walks into class 1 to 5 and demands an apology from Gray. Gray refuses, but before Philip can escalate the situation, Ben Park intervenes. After giving a thinly veiled threat to Philip, and a direct threat to Philip's cronies, Ben apologizes for the scene and swoops Philip out of the room, much to Gray's confusion and Eugene's relief. On the school rooftop, the humiliated Philip swears revenge on Ben. Knowing he stands no chance in a physical confrontation against Ben, Philip instead contacts Jimmy Bae, a bully at Yosun High School who has bad blood with Ben. Philip claims that Ben is scheming to crush Jimmy, much to Jimmy's fury. Philip successfully tricks Jimmy Bae into thinking that Ben Park is trash-talking him and planning to beat him. The furious Jimmy swears that he will crush Ben, and orders his gang to bring Ben before him the next day. Flashbacks show that Jimmy and Ben had a fight the year before. Jimmy won, but it is implied that he only did so with the help of someone named Donald N.A., whom Jimmy insists remain in the dark about his plot against Ben. At Eunjang, Eugene attempts to converse with Gray, despite being terrified of him and unable to get a read on his personality. The other students in class 1 to 5 are visibly annoyed at this, and Eugene is hit by one while Gray goes to the bathroom. Upon returning to class, Gray sees a red mark on Eugene's neck, and recognizes that this, along with the general disrespect he is receiving for his weak appearance, is part of a larger problem that can't be solved immediately. Later, Ben convinces Alex to go and play pool after school. Philip overhears and texts Jimmy's second-in-command, Jack Kang, the location. What he doesn't hear is Ben and Alex deciding to skip their last period and leaving early. Meanwhile, another student in class 1 to 5 begins to harass Gray, having decided that Colton's weakness is a more likely factor than Gray's strength. A visibly furious Gray, fuming that the bullies fail to understand what he's capable of. In class 1 to 5, Eugene Gale silently reflects that Colton Choi's defeat has emboldened the other thugs in class, as they refuse to believe that Gray is dangerous. Out of the corner of his eye, he notices the silent fury in Gray's eyes. Meanwhile, a group of 5 Yosun High School students arrive at the underpass to wait for Ben Park. Ben, having arrived at the pool hall early with Alex, is blissfully unaware of this, and is far more concerned with the beautiful part-timer working at the hall. Rather than Ben, the first Eunjang student the Yosun students encounter is Gray. Gray initially attempts to avoid them, especially when he sees how many are present. However, prodding from one student, Helmut, pushes him over the edge. Alex and Ben overhear the resulting commotion, and recognize one of the Yosun students as Jack Kang, Jimmy Bae's second-in-command. As they sprint down to the underpass, Gerard comes to Gray's aid, protecting him from an attack. Before the two are overwhelmed, Alex and Ben arrive to aid them. Ben correctly guesses the Yosun students were out for him specifically, declaring that he's on the Gutsy Kids team. Having only ever fought alone, Gray is surprised to be fighting alongside 3 others. As the two schools stand off, Ben provokes Jack by calling him Jimmy's minion and mocking Jimmy for not coming to fight himself. Jack loses his temper and threatens to take care of Ben's other arm. At this, Alex snaps and attacks Jack, turning the confrontation into an all-out brawl. In the chaos, Helmut attempts to attack Gray in retribution, but his attempt to grab Gray from behind only leads to Gray breaking his pinky and slamming his head into the wall. Helmut's defeat stuns the others into ending the fight. Afterwards, Gray heads off to cram school, turning down Ben's offer to join them. Gerard joins Alex and Ben for pool, where the 3 discuss Gray and Jimmy's next move. As they leave, Ben and Alex discuss the incident that Jack was referring to. Behind them, Gerard silently considers what happened. Meanwhile, Gray arrives at his cram school. Due to arriving late thanks to the fight, he unknowingly catches the attention of a girl from another school, who is instantly smitten with his appearance. During break, Yosun student Hugo Yoon talks about the fight with a friend, much to the annoyance of the other students. Jimmy is furious when he learns of his gang's defeat. He especially derides Helmut for being so thoroughly beaten, and tells him not to show his face until he is called up again. Helmut meekly accepts his punishment, but silently fumes at being singled out, and decides to report the incident to Donald N.A. Jimmy regrets that he sent out his group rather than dealing with Ben himself, admitting to himself that his rash decision led to the worst possible outcome. He silently vows to surpass Ben, and one day, that fucker too. At his cram school, Gray reflects on Ben declaring himself as part of his team in the fight with Yosun. As class closes for the evening, Hugo Yoon takes Gray's notebook to copy it. Gray chooses to accept it, much to the displeasure of the girl who noticed him before. While leaving his classroom, another student recognizes Gray from middle school. Recalling that Gray was at the top of his class then, he is surprised to see Gray in an Eunjang uniform rather than that of a more prestigious school, and wonders if that incident is the reason why. Meanwhile, the girl from class finds herself distracted by Gray when she sees him on her bus ride home. The next day, Evanyo decides to make his move on Gray, hoping that doing so will help him get into the Youngjunpo Union, and approaches Colton Choi for backup. Colton seemingly agrees to help, although he is doubtful that Evan stands a chance against Gray. Soon after, Evan tries to aggravate Gray by drooling into his textbook, while Colton watches anxiously from the distance. Deliberately showing no reaction to aggravate Evan, Gray uses the textbook to smash in Evan's face. While doing so, Gray thinks to the day late in the last summer, in which he swore to never lose again. A flashback shows a bandaged figure lying in a hospital bed.